Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Hilltop. Today on our podcast, we have the honor of being joined by Peter Vlahutin, currently the associate principal here at Chaminade, and has filled a number of roles in the school for many years. And so we are going to be talking to him about those experiences and his life in general. So thanks again, Peter.
You're welcome.
For joining us. Great to have you here. So I always do like to start out for those long timers like you. Here we are at the end of 2024 school year. What number of years is this? How long have you been here now?
It's my 28th school year.
28th. Cool. Yeah. Congratulations on that, and thank you for those many years of service. So we're going to get into some of those, but I'd like to start at the beginning if we could. Take us through the early days. I know you're not originally from St. Louis, right? So take the audience through a little bit of the youth.
Well, so born in Ohio, moved around a little bit in Ohio until I was 7, then we moved out to California, kind of grew up in Northern California, East Bay area, went to De La Salle High School for my freshman year, big football powerhouse, people might know.
Right.
It's kind of funny, Phil Thornburg, who's a PE teacher here, went to Mater Dei, there's a big rivalry. Right. He's got the most pros, I got the most wins, so I think I came out ahead a little bit. And then after my freshman year, my dad took a job in West Virginia, so we moved from California to West Virginia, graduated from high school in West Virginia, then ended up at the University of Dayton, graduate school at St. Louis, and then came to St. Louis, and have now been here 30 years.
We'll pick up on that story more, but what was it, your dad's jobs that sort of took you around the country? Or
yeah,
what was that?
My dad's an electrical engineer, he got his PhD at Case Western, and was working for a company in Ohio where he did a lot of traveling, and then he got a job with Kaiser Aluminum, and that took us out to California, and then it was a Kaiser Aluminum plant in West Virginia, and then about 6 months after we moved there, they sold the plant, but he stayed on, retired from there, and then it was a new location for us, very different than California,
right.
and pivotal probably in my formation and development.
Gotcha. Well, we'll talk about that also in just a second, but what was young Pete Vlahutin like? What were you into? What were hobbies, interests, etc.?
So when we moved out to California, I played soccer because it was a big hotbed for soccer in California. Played some basketball, did some track, but mostly soccer. In the Boy Scouts, ended up being an Eagle Scout, so that was kind of a big activity for us. California, skiing, hiking, going to the beach, all within a couple hours of our house. Pretty nice stuff, so we try to do that, be outdoors.
From a big family, small family, siblings?
I'm the oldest of 3. I have a younger sister who's a year and a half younger than me, and the younger brother's 5.5 years younger.
Very good.
Then I've got cousins all over the place, but we never lived near any of them, so it's kind of just us growing up.
Yeah. Gotcha. So West Virginia, you mentioned kind of an important part of your life during those high school years, those formative years. What does that mean?
So I went from a school of about 800 to a school of about 200, 7th through 12th, and so the Catholic population in West Virginia is pretty small, and it's pretty big in Parkersburg, but small for the state. Right. And so we had 39 in my high school class. So for better or for worse, you got to know the people that you were in school with. But I had a lot of opportunities. I was in a lot of activities. I wouldn't have played basketball at De La Salle. I wouldn't have played basketball here, but I got to play basketball there. We didn't have a soccer team for my high school, but the guys I played with in the kind of the club season all went to the public school, and they had it. So 10 of the 11 starters on our team were part of their team, and I just had to watch. And then really good in school, really liked studying, liked learning. Don't remember doing a lot of homework in high school. I must have done some, but lived within 5 minutes of school, so I could get up and within 20 minutes be at my locker. It was kind of nice. And,
for sure.
Being a small town, a lot of advantages. People know you. And then kind of started to have some experiences with my faith junior and senior year. It became more important to me, and got involved with kind of a youth group with a bunch of friends, and just had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, so I want to play off that a little bit. I know obviously in your roles here at Chaminade over time, faith is a big part of your life. Yeah. And so was that always the case? Were you sort of a cradle Catholic in that way?
Yeah, cradle Catholic, always gone to church. My mom has 5 brothers. She's got 1 younger and 4 older, and her second oldest brother was a missionary priest in Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
He passed away in an accident like September. I was born the following April, so I never met him, but the stories of Uncle Father Jerry abound. And so there's always been kind of this piece of our family that's pretty dedicated to the faith. And I didn't really understand that much growing up. I went to Catholic school, went to church, but as I grew older, began to study and learn a little more and take it on personally, became like a bigger part of who I am. And kind of guided me into this career that I've had here that it wouldn't have otherwise.
Right. So was that part of your reason for choosing Dayton for college?
Well,
the Catholic school part, or just take us through that college selection?
So I was good in math and science. So every teacher's like, oh, you got to be an engineer. You got to be an engineer. So I applied.
And your father, right? Coming from that background.
He's an electrical. So I applied to 9 schools. I thought, well, I'll get into a couple. I'll have to choose between those. I got in all 9. My birthday's in the middle of April. I still didn't know what school I was going to my senior year. I made my decision on May 1st to go to the University of Dayton. Worcester Tech in Massachusetts, MIT, Northwestern, Notre Dame, all viable options. But I ended up at Dayton because they gave me a full ride, which was helpful with 2 younger siblings and knowing that we weren't a really wealthy family.
Right.
And then they have an honors program. So it was 40 kids out of 1,600 that are in this specialized program, which I got to be a part of. And,
very cool.
And then, when I look back at it, all the things that were available to me at Dayton that wouldn't have been at other places, it was a good fit. And, I met the Marianists there, changed my major from engineering to math to adding religious studies, so I double majored. I spent 4 full years every semester. I wrote a weekly column for the school newspaper. Those are journalist type things other places, but at Dayton I was able to do that. Gave some theological and spiritual reflections, commentary on things going on in the world. And, my freshman year columns are pretty raw. But by my senior year, I developed a style and a little more sophisticated writer. And wouldn't have had that opportunity other places.
So what were you writing? Sort of general interest stuff?
Just
stories or opinion columns?
It was opinion column, but it was all faith-based stuff. Something would happen, Pope would say something, I'd comment on that, or there'd be some issue in the news, or it was 89 to 94, so the war, the first war kind of with Iraq was part of that. So talking about just war theory and conscience formation, just whatever kind of. Sometimes I would know, and sometimes I'd sit down and go, I got an hour before deadline, and then come up with something.
So at this point in your life, obviously your faith has grown in your life and become even a larger part. You said early on, went to school, went to Catholic school, went to Mass, right? But so you sort of mentioned that changed in West Virginia, junior, senior. Talk us through that a little bit more and how that evolved.
So I got confirmed junior year high school, and then one of the student government positions my senior year was religious activities coordinator. So I took that role on. We started a retreat program. So I started a kind of a junior senior with the retreat coordinator, juniors and seniors helping lead 7th and 8th grade retreats. So it's kind of my first retreat experience. As part of that, one of the guys that came in and trained us had been on this group called National Evangelization Teams, or NET. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then a couple years later, after my sophomore year in college, I took a year off to do that. And so I spent basically the school year traveling around with 10 other people in a van, and we were in North Dakota and Minnesota, and 4 months in Louisiana. We did about 140 retreats, and really developed some skills in ministry, some personal skills, like when you're living with people in a van.
Amen.
You know how, like, when people get on your nerves, how to deal with it, right? You can't run away. So really good formative stuff there, and developed. I probably went into the year thinking, okay, I'm a math major, I'm a religious studies major, I'm going to do something with one of those, I don't know what. Had kind of an idea that teaching would be something for me. I always liked figuring out how things work and explaining that to other people. From even, I don't know if it's because I knew stuff in grade school, so everybody wanted me to explain it to them, or just kind of naturally evolved that way. And then that year kind of set me up to go into graduate school in theology. So I finished up at Dayton, and then ended up at St. Louis University for graduate school. At the end of the master's degree, there was an option to go get a PhD, and I was like, well, PhD people teach. I don't know if I want to teach. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I'm good at it. I better go see. Right? So I'll take a couple years. I'll see if I like teaching, and then I'll go back. It's been 28 years. I didn't go back and get the PhD. Because I'd met the Marianists at Dayton, and really I had 2 Marianist priests in my math department that I took a lot of classes from. A brother and a priest. I had some priests in the theology department that I took a lot of classes from. I got to know the Marianists. My senior year, I lived with the Marianist community. I was an aspirant in kind of discernment. Had a great community, just really solid Marianist brothers in that community. And And then at the end of the year, just kind of discerned, I'm not ready for this. So I ended up, going to graduate school, and then, so I knew, gosh, I had this connection with the Marianists. There's Marianist schools in St. Louis. That'd be a good spot to kind of figure out this teaching thing. I knew not so much about Vianney and St. Mary's, but I knew like the students at Chaminade were serious students. That appealed to me, and it was 10 minutes from where I was living, which was a big appeal.
Right.
And then I just scattered my resume everywhere, and Mr. Gerker, who was the principal at the time, gave me a call, and I don't remember much from the interview. He doesn't remember much of the interview. He asked me about the Marianist charism. He must have liked my answer.
Right.
I came back a couple days later to interview with Dr. K, with Mike Throw, who's the director of campus ministry. Dr. K was hilarious. She says, "What kind of name is Vlahutin?" I said, "Oh, it's a kind of a rare Croatian name." Oh my gosh, she's jumped up, comes around the test, gives me a big hug, because her Croatian background is very important to her.
Right.
So I'm sitting there going, well, I think I probably have this job.
That helps, right?
But it was interesting. I wanted to teach, but they were also kind of expanding the campus ministry program. They saw all that ministry background that I had. They said, well, would you be willing to do halftime and halftime? Well, we interview a job. You never say no.
Amen.
You say yes. And so I've only taught 10 classes in 28 years, and it's what I came here to do. But it's been a beautiful career, and it's been a nice. My talents have been used, I think, for good, and I've had these great experiences. And like so many things in life, you don't plan it out.
Right.
And then afterwards, you look back and you're like, I couldn't have done better.
That's what I've heard from so many of these interviews. People say, well, this just happened, or I ended up, or God's grace got me here, or whatever it might be. So we'll get into some of those logistics in a minute. But I want to follow up on the Marianist charism. Certainly, probably most of the people listening to this are very familiar with the Marianists. But for those of you who aren't, what makes a Marianist Marianist? What makes them different from the Jesuits or from the Christian Brothers or whatever it might be?
So, if you look at it on paper, right? You look at all the documents, everything they say. There's nothing really distinctive. Like people will talk about, but I think when you put it into practice, it's noticeably different. When I was at Dayton, you say hi to people you don't know. You smile at everybody when you're walking around. Like I always knew somebody wherever I went. I still met new people my senior year, graduation weekend. I was at parties meeting people, right? I came to St. Louis University. I'm not trying to knock the Jesuits or St. Louis University, but people looked at me weird when I smiled and said hello. Like those sort of things. Like there's just a kind of an experience of hospitality and generosity that then gets infused with all this Marian spirituality, this vision of Father Chaminade about discipleship of equals, about community on mission. That just kind of it's a fertile ground for all of that. And then all focused on being like Christ.
That's a great description. So I always like to get a perspective of what were some of those first days or first months here. You said, I wasn't sure if I'm a teacher. I wasn't sure if I want to do this for real, but I think I do. But can you take your mind back to those first days, weeks, months of your first school year?
So one of the very first things that happened is Wayne McKim, who was the director of the resident program, also ran CLC, which is now MLC. And he said, this was like in maybe end of May or beginning of June. Hey, I need somebody to go to Texas for life camp with our seniors. Sure. So my first experience really of Chaminade was 7 seniors, 10 days down in Texas. Wow. And it couldn't have been a better group of guys. They were just really like great examples of Chaminade students. They gave me all like, here are the teachers you need to like surround yourself with. These are the ones we like. This is the things that they do, the relationships they build.
Cool.
And then it was like I had 7 seniors that I knew. Right. And I taught sophomores, so I didn't have much interaction with seniors except kind of in the hallways. And then we did this like freshman kind of caving, high ropes sort of adventure set of days before the school year started. And so we went caving, but the kids went caving, and the adults stood out and stood on the shelter. And Steph Otis was in the group that I was with. And Steph's 30th and final school year was my first year, so I overlapped him with 1 year. He was a longtime English teacher. And he spent whoever was with us, it might have been Dave Clark, I don't remember, asked him like, how was the summer? He goes, last year other than my first year, was the worst year of teaching I'd ever had. The freshmen were horrible. He He went on for about 10 or 15 minutes.
The students you're going to have as sophomores.
And then he goes, so what are you teaching? And I said, those guys. Now, to their credit, they had matured a lot since freshman year. There'd been some change in the class, but I loved them. They were. I think there's something special about your very first class. And I was fortunate. I taught half of them in sophomore year, and I taught another section of them when they were seniors. So I taught some of the guys twice, and then a lot of them were involved in campus ministry, and I really got to know them well and develop really good relationships with them. And I enjoyed being in the classroom. We had a lot of fun. Nothing was off limits in a theology classroom. You just kind of go with where they have questions. It was a morality class, so not a lot of
open-ended,
dull sort of conversations. I mean, it was pretty lively, and so just a lot of good characters and guys that when I go to the reunion, I still have a lot of great conversations with. It was tough. You don't know what you're doing. You're trying to plan ahead. I remember I didn't even know that there was a longer class than the other classes the first day. So luckily I'd prepared a couple of days, and I used all of my preparation in that one class to get through. It was like the lunch block, and I was like, oh boy, I didn't look real closely. So
that's what I've talked about with other people, sort of staying one day ahead of the students at least, right? Especially in those early days, for sure.
And then because I was doing campus ministry stuff, I did a lot of lesson plans for subs, and we had shorter classes, like 42 minutes. So I did a lot of okay, here's where we're at. I'd sit in my chair in front of my bookcase in my apartment with an old VHS big old camera, and I would record a 35-minute lecture to be played on the TV that they would roll into the room. Right. The kids called it VTV. It was pretty funny. So the first time they were real excited. We're gonna have a movie, that before. And then they're like, it's him. So then they'd do guided notes, and then I would follow up the next day.
Flipped classroom, right? You're ahead of your time in that way.
Yes, it was. It made it so I could try to do both. It wasn't tenable long term, so I ended up stepping out of the classroom and doing full-time retreat ministry and campus ministry after 4 years. So.
You mentioned a couple of them with Steph and Dave Clark. Who are some of the other impactful teachers that maybe helped you in your transition, or during that early era kind of had a big impact on students? One
of the things I did, and I'm remiss that I don't share this with new faculty. I asked my students, halfway through sophomore year, what teachers do you like? And Jim Gerker's name kept coming up. So I went and spent a week. I went to 5 straight classes in Jim Gerker's class and just experienced he was open to that. I did the same thing with Steve Fink. Steve Fink was the 8th grade science teacher and had this really structured 8-day cycle in his class that he trained the kids on. And so I went and sat through it. I borrowed a couple things from each of them that was very helpful. Wayne McKim used to always go on all the junior retreats, and so as I was developing the Emmaus program, he was part of that. And he was wonderful. He would always say, "I teach kids." I'm a social studies teacher, but I teach kids, and they responded to that. And it was I wish I would have had more time with him, but to me, one of these great stories is he got cancer. He was battling cancer for a whole year. And the day his juniors were taking the AP US History test, that was the evening he died.
Wow.
He got them to the test, but just a special guy with a real heart for our students and put them first. And then I got to work with Mike Throw for 11 years side by side in campus ministry, and it's kind of a rare thing. I came in and he said, "Here, take over the program, do what you want." Gave me free reign, let me bring my ideas in, worked with me, gave me a lot of creativity room. It's kind of a special sort of experience. I know a lot of people don't get that. They could come in, do a working environment, and this is what you're going to do. And, he was awesome. Never his ego was non-existent. So it was really fun to work with him. And then going on Kairos with Father Ralph for years, just his love for our students, his ability to connect with them. I don't know that all the teachers or all the students saw, he had a real playful side that came out on Kairos. One of my favorite memories was we had done a Kairos retreat in Perryville, and the leaders and the adults were driving back to school, and one of the seniors, it wasn't driving, another guy was driving, decided to moon Father Ralph on the way back. So they passed him, mooned him, kept going. 5 minutes later, Father Ralph speeds by them, picked up his camera, waved his camera out the window, and beat him to school. And the rest of the year, they were worried that somewhere along the line, this picture's going to show up that he had taken.
That's pretty witty and quick from him, for sure.
Yeah.
I like that. So you mentioned Kairos. Was that Kairos already started here at Chaminade, or did that institute during your time?
So the year before I came, the first group of guys went out to California. The second group of guys went out to California, and the first one was held here.
So you were in it from the beginning.
Kairos 2 was my first Kairos retreat.
Right, very good.
And so it was small, it was optional, so it's kind of built up to what it is today, and just lots of great memories of really powerful moments on that retreat. Guys that had, connections, understandings about their life that they hadn't really had time to think about before that happened on that retreat. I don't talk about it too much, but Tim Sartori's retreat, his small group, I can remember all those guys in that small group, some of their conversations. Just not because he came back, just because it was powerful.
Wow.
So there's 3 or 4 of those, like, very powerful times on a retreat that I can remember.
Sure.
And then Emmaus and sophomore overnight, just lots of good time interacting with students and challenging them, and letting them kind of explore some things without the classroom pressure or the environment at school, but being away and what makes retreats retreat.
So in general, from mid 90s, right? Late 90s?
I started in 96.
96, yeah. So in general, from 96 to here in 2024, I always say, there's obvious things that have changed on campus, buildings and such, but kind of is the vibe different here? And certainly some things like laptops and all that, right? I mean, things are different, but is the school still the same, or what is different about it?
I think the house system's the biggest difference, really.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
because
too,
there was a lot of, kind of the joke was always, the underclass would be like, I never understood the newspaper till I was a senior. Because everything in the newspaper was what the seniors thought, and their jokes and their humor, their experiences. Right. And so the house system kind of broke into that, where it wasn't just divisional type of things, where we spent more time in cross-divisional. I think it was the second year of the house system. We had this kind of Friday where the soccer team had got postponed because of darkness on Thursday. So we had to play a district soccer game. We had a really good team, and we lost like 3 minutes into the overtime period on a busted play and a header. And then that night we went and we had the state water polo championship, and we lost 8-7 to SLU in that. And in both of those events, when the guys came off the field, it was underclassmen in addition to seniors, greeting them, consoling them, that stuck around after both events. Never would have happened before the house system. Those connections where an 8th grader would know a senior in a way that would want to do something for him. So I think that's kind of changed. It's put a more formalized sense of, for the teachers as a mentor, like building relationships in a 15 minutes where you're not responsible for content necessarily. You can just play games or interact or talk. I think that's been transformative. When before the house system, all the freshmen would be in a homeroom together, and so the 19 returning guys and the 6 new guys, right? The 6 new guys stand out. With the house system, the freshmen all go into a new mentor group. Everybody else is returning. It's the freshmen that are all different, regardless of whether they were here in 8th grade. So instead of the freshmen kind of ripping on each other, they bond, like they have to kind of clump together.
Right.
And so that little dynamic, I think, has made it a lot easier for new freshmen to come in and be part of our school. And those things have subtle changes over time, in terms of building community and allowing guys to be open to each other and experiences. And the curriculum's changed, all that stuff. That ebbs and flows over the history of a school, but I think the house system has been the key cultural change that's happened.
Yeah, let's use this opportunity then to talk more about the house system. You were one of the first deans, is that correct?
I was. Middle school Lamoureux.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Great to always have a Lamoureux guy on the podcast. Yeah. But what were some of those early days of the house system like in terms of, Jim Garker kind of talked us through how the idea came about and such, but I'm a little more interested in what were the early days like? Was it like what a student experiences now? What were some of the hiccups? What were some of the failures? What were some of the successes?
A lot of hiccups, a lot of failures. We spent, so it was end of February of 2003, they announced, here are the 10 deans. We didn't know who was paired with who yet. We didn't know what house names, or we knew 5 houses, 10 deans. And we met roughly 2 to 3 times a week, a couple hours every time for the rest of that semester, just trying to plan and organize and structure, like getting 10 people to try to communicate clearly. It's hard. And we didn't know, we had these basic concepts, house system, and then trying to figure it all out. So the first couple of years, like our house days were 2 classes, mass, lunch as a house, and a house meeting, 2 classes. Well, that was great until you had to teach those 2 classes after those days. So then we had really good sense the mentor group was going well, but house identity not so much. Then we tried to do house meetings every Wednesday for 20 minutes for a couple of years. That became the content wasn't sustainable in terms of making that worthwhile time. And so we settled in on some stuff. The Red Devil Relay didn't come till year 7 or 8. The house show that's now in the theater was a talent show at night for optional people that, went on forever because every band wanted to set up and play their best stuff. And so a lot of those things, we started off with reserve mentors, so but not everybody was like plugged in at the beginning. That changed. Meyer House Middle School was in the basement because we had 4 mentor groups in middle school. So we went down to 3 and moved them back so everybody was in the middle school. So those little structural things like that. And really, because we're a 7-year school, it takes 7 years till nobody knows what was before.
Sure.
So there was a lot of that growing with the system, but I love being a part of it, interacting with the mentors, with the students. For me, having done most of my work in the high school to be a middle school dean, and I had 4 years where I knew all the Lamoureux middle school guys, so that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that.
Who was your dean with you in those days?
So the first year was Marty Strohmeyer.
Oh, right.
And then he went to Viz, and then Rick Widmeyer and I.
So Rick has been pretty much all along.
Yeah, so Chaburra since the beginning.
Yep.
And then,
he's the one that's been here the
Rick
entire time.
One less than him. Awesome. But there's a kind of the veteran guard.
So you kind of mentioned it a little bit in some of your stories about those soccer games and the water polo game, but are there some early events, whether they be house events or just the school spirit, that you realized, hey, this is kind of working? Is there anything that jogged your mind?
Those 2 stood out because those were like in the second year.
Sure.
Something small, but we didn't have crests, we didn't have colors, we just had names the first year, and the students kind of developed those things. And so when guys came forward to put input into like the crest, and they had serious conversations about, like, they went and looked at what's heraldry look like and what fits Lamoureux,
Right.
So
Interesting.
Lamoureux's got a lot of like more traditional stuff on their crest,
Sure.
no words. All the other houses have words. We just have the different things there, and then when we had to pick a color, I think yellow was like our 8th choice. And I know it's 5, but we had silver and we had black. And we had 2 different blues, and then because other houses, so we ended up with yellow. And they got upset by that because it was not, so seeing them invested in the process and their identity, and and then when we had competition days, and we had we had this event called a chariot race. And
I don't even know about this
so
one.
it was 2 poles with canvas in between.
Right.
And the first year we did it on the football field, we put teachers in the chariot, and they got beat up. So the second year we used grain bags, 100-pound bags of grass seed, a couple of those in there. But it was a rainy day, so we did it in the gym. And you had your mentor group in 3 parts. So you went down, back, down, and Lamoureux won 8 of the 9 heats because we won the first one, and then everybody else, like, nobody wanted to be the mentor group. And the intensity of hauling, guys running, holding on and getting dragged, like just that level of commitment to a meaningless house event, but they wanted to win. Right. And so that type of stuff, just seeing the kids get engaged in it. And,
fabulous.
And then having leaders that, sophomore, junior year, probably were in Mr. Loyat's office on a regular basis. Their high school mentor group said, please remove them from the high school mentor group. And then seeing them go down to the middle school and just thrive as a leader. Like, be in their element, get the attention from the middle school kids, and not be like mean and not be inappropriate, but really to lead and guide them. Just to see that kind of transformation on some guys was just powerful stuff.
Awesome.
You know, as a teacher, when you see growth, like you're like, okay, that's what we're aiming for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a little different direction. You mentioned Father Ralph earlier, and his sort of wit and his impact on Kairos. He had started here at Chaminade before you, but not that long before you. So you were here for a lot of his reign in that way. What do you think is sort of the impact he had on the school? I mean, certainly everyone can recognize it in different ways, but how does it tie into what you see?
So Father Ralph was just an incredibly brilliant man. Like his background, his intelligence, his learning, he was always doing like, well, I'm gonna take this class, I'm gonna read this book, I'm gonna do this lecture, like, and then bringing that into, like when I got to be on the administrative team, like bringing that stuff into our conversations. But at the same time, he had this really great approach: hire good people, put them in a good role, and let them do what they're good at. And so he didn't micromanage, he didn't interject very much. He just kind of let you do your thing well, that you do well. And the testament to that, I think, in our school is pretty significant. Just the culture that creates among administration and faculty, that we hired you to do a job, we trust you to do it well. We'll assist you as much as we can, but we're not be walking over your shoulder every day telling you what to do. Like, you know, and I think that comes kind of his style and his approach. You know, and I will say, till I retire, the best thing I ever did was hire Todd Guidry in campus ministry.
There you go.
Because he is just the perfect personality and just the best person from our community to take over from him, and not to be intimidated by Father Ralph and his legacy, but to grasp it and understand it, and to really want to do well for our school, and to have that same sort of trust in the people that are here.
Right. And Todd came in as your successor, right?
So
when you moved into administration, is that right?
When Mike Thoreau went back to the classroom, Dr. Peters asked me to be director of campus ministry, and then I hired Todd to do the retreat coordinator position. So we worked together in campus ministry for 6 years. We both moved into administration at the same time, so we worked together, I guess, 8 years or so with that, and then he took over for Father Ralph after that.
So what brought about your move in administration? Was it something you were always sort of looking at or wanted to do? Was it somebody came and tapped you on the shoulder,
Exactly,
or how did that go?
Nothing in my life, for the most part, has been see it, want it, pursue it. It's just sort of like, what's the next step in whatever, you know. I was very content with the retreat program. Lou kind of pulled me in and said, well, you can hire your replacement, or I can hire Mike's replacement, and you got to live with that. So it was kind of a challenge, and I said, well, okay, I'll do that. And when I became director of campus ministry, I was like, I don't know anything about educational administration. My degrees are in math and theology. So I did the Catholic School Leadership Program, took those courses through SLU, and tried to get some knowledge and some understanding on how things work from an administrative side. So, and that was very helpful, because I didn't know what I was doing. I knew campus ministry, I didn't know the broader school stuff, and so I could go into an A-team meeting and say something useful about the direction of the school or a program or something. Sure. And then as a house dean, Phil and I worked together. Phil Rohn was Meyer House High School dean, so we worked from the beginning in the house system, then on the A-team together when he became associate principal and I was director of campus ministry. So then when he became principal, he asked me to be associate principal. I probably took 4 or 5 weeks before I said yes. That's
what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
that's a huge change, right? Moving into the head of campus ministry from retreat coordinator is certainly a change, but this is a complete left turn.
When people would ask me about it, I would say, so when I was in campus ministry and director of campus ministry, students would come into my office. We'd have these like really good, deep conversations about their life and the things that they were doing. And I had the same conversations as an associate principal. I just made the kid come into my office instead of him coming on his own. But so it's just a different side of ministry, dealing with different students, and often dealing with parents in when they're having a really bad interaction with their son, or a bad situation, or that I have to give them bad news about something, and just try to do that in a way that's gracious and hospitable to them, but also true to the mission and identity of our school.
Yeah, how do you prepare yourself for that? That's one of the things that I always look. And obviously,
the first year I wrote out like exactly what I'm saying.
speech, right?
But then as you do it more, you get a little, one of the things that helped me, I think, like, you issue a consequence that's not real good, or sometimes, right? It means a kid can't play in a basketball game or football game, or is out of school, miss an event, or just all these things that nobody likes to hear. And parents would push back, and they'd keep coming at you, and I just listen, and I say, listen, you're doing what you should do as a parent. You're advocating for your son, and I really appreciate that. And it's fine that you're doing that. It's not going to change.
Right.
But keep advocating for your son. Like, he needs to know that you're doing that. As his dad, as his mom, he needs to know that you're behind him. And I don't criticize any parent for that.
Sure.
And, I think, most of that stuff, in the moment, it's really intense, and then 3 weeks later, it's forgotten,
Sure.
and we've moved on to other things.
Sure.
And there's been some times where we've had to ask kids to leave. I don't like that, but every time it's been the right decision, based on the behavior. I just wish the kids would have not been in that position where they could have been part of our community all the way through. I think we have just a great experience here, that I don't want to take that away from anybody if I don't have to.
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So I know, related to this past school year, you sort of shifted your administrative role. You want to talk through that a little bit, how that came about, and what your new role is, and sort of how you're starting to figure that out and feeling in that role?
So the last 10 years, I've been doing student development, which just a broad variety of things. I did the schedule for a little while, and then when Dr. K went into semi-retirement, and Beth Dunlop and Brett DeNoyer came into the Principal's Council, I kind of trained Brett and handed off to him as the associate principal for instruction. It made more sense for him to kind of do the schedule and work with that. And then last maybe April or May, Dr. Guidry's vision is he wanted something specifically mission-wise that was a little more concrete and a little more developed. And so him and Phil kind of said, why don't we give day-to-day discipline in the high school to Brett, and then let you kind of focus on this. So I don't know what that's going to look like long-term. There's some stuff I did this year in terms of presentations, working with the theology department. It's a lot more meetings at this point, which is hard to, as an administrator, you are in a lot of meetings, but then I'm like, oh, I'm in a lot more. But it's good, because then I have like a broader sense of some things that are going on at the school. And then I've been doing these conversations with the faculty and the staff, and they've been very fruitful. And I probably have 5 to 10 years worth of ideas based on those conversations of things that our students might need or our faculty might need. And then I'm doing student services, which is kind of this like collective heap.
Catch all.
So like one of the things I did this year is we have a assistance animal, a dog that assists a student with mobility that we've never had before. So I had to do a lot of work to kind of come up with how are we going to make this work? What's the policy going to be so that not everybody can just bring whatever animal they want to school? And then there's a whole legal aspect to that. And then reaching out to a lot of other schools to see how they do it. And teachers were awesome. Like no teacher said, no, not my, like they were all 100% on board. And there were some challenges we had to deal with, but it worked out. And
awesome.
So I think what happens is something comes up and everybody goes, that's student services. It comes to me, which is fine. I like that, the logistical stuff, the daily schedule, whenever we have a special schedule. I like doing those things. And,
great. Yeah. So back to mission, obviously we're in a time of transition here, as you mentioned earlier, from Dr. Guidry not having a Marianist as the president of the school, and obviously, the Marianist presence in terms of vowed Marianist on campus is small now. Right. So how do you go about how does the school as a whole go about sort of keeping that Marianist charism strong? So
it was kind of really a cool kind of experience for me early on. The document on the CMAs came out around 96, and then in 98, the Marianists said, we want you to create these teams at every school, 5 people. They called them the local implementation teams to kind of make the Marianist charism happen among the lay people. So our team was Father Ralph, Dr. K, Mike Francis, Phil Thornburg, and myself. So we did a couple of training weekends where we got to go, and they just immersed us in the CMEs and then this particular process that they wanted us to use. And Dr. K, who's just in her brilliant wisdom, said, we could roll this into the self-study. And so that, I think, gave us a leg up in terms of talking about the charism, how it could be implemented in every aspect of our school, and then what are the practical things we could do to make that happen. So I think, as far as the Marianist school goes, we're used to the vernacular, the vocabulary, the charism is something that the students know, the teachers know. So it's about sustaining that. It's about maintaining, I think, our identity in a way that's visible. We don't brag enough as a school. Mm-hmm. We really don't. So there's things that we do that the community doesn't know. Sometimes the Marianists don't know. And so some of that is part of the process of kind of pulling things together, writing them up, making sure people know. And one of the kind of aspects is just as we push forward with things like hospitality and inclusivity, we push forward in terms of care for the environment and sustainability, just really always moving forward, but always making sure we're doing that in a way that's consistent with our Catholic and Marianist identity. And so a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings, but all good stuff. It's important to who we are. And I think the fact that our enrollment is strong, our recruiting is strong, that what's going on at the school is something that people want to invest in. The flip side of that is just maintaining its accessibility for everybody, which is a big part, I think, of the work that Todd and Lisa Schaefer's doing in advancement to make it so that anybody who wants to be here, who's qualified to be here, has that opportunity.
Awesome, wonderful. Yeah. On a little different line of thought, you had the experience, as I did, and a lot of teachers here, of having your son here with you. What were those 4 years like, and any challenges and/or great memories from those times? Yeah,
it was. So he was born while I was the teacher here. He was born 17 weeks premature. So from day one, the community here knew who he was and was supportive. He was born on Monday. On Tuesday, Dave McCoy, who I'd been doing a lot of work with orientation with for about 5 years, brought a big basket of snacks to the hospital for us. The Principal's Council came and visited us in the hospital. The students were praying, the teachers were praying, parents were reaching out and praying. And so from the beginning, his situation was such that the community was part of his life from the beginning. So I think he always felt comfortable here. It's kind of cool. If I'd have had a freshman when I first started here, I don't think he would have been successful because we didn't have the accommodation program. We didn't have the SEEPs. We didn't have any understanding of that. And he had a expressive language disorder, which made certain things challenging for him. Teachers were awesome. He had such great experiences. I'd have to pull it out of him every day after school. What happened today? And I made him tell me 3 things on the way home. And sometimes we stayed in the car in the driveway until he told me the third thing. So COVID was horrible for him. He was a sophomore when we shut down for a couple months. And what was just go to the classroom, interact with everybody, answer a question if you get asked or called upon, became watch this, read this, write this. And I think he was out of words by April with COVID. And so that was a hard year. His junior year was a struggle. And then he had his best academic year as a senior. Just a combination of things, and just really sort of came into his own academically and was thriving. And it's at Lindenwood, he's doing great. So just get an employable career and we'll be good.
There you go.
But it was just nice to have that other experience, of the parent side, and then have some of the student side. You just get different perspective on things. And
that's what I loved about it too. with my own son, and
Yeah.
I had the unique opportunity of being on the student when my dad was teaching at the high school I went to.
Yeah.
So I had it came full circle in that
nice.
way. So
Yeah.
that was a fun experience for me too as well. Mine went blank for a second. I was gonna what I was gonna talk about. Go ahead.
Just a couple other things that just in my head as we were. One of the things that nobody else kind of talked about a little bit, but what has always impressed me over the years is the way our students respond to loss and tragedy. And they've really, it's just always impressive to me, just the things that happen and then the way they respond. So probably it was my third year here. We had a freshman who started as a freshman. It was Christmas break. He died in an explosion in his house. He and his dad was a cameraman for one of the local stations. So on Christmas break, we had 3 or 4 buses. We had about 400 people from Chaminade down at St. Matthews. Wow. We were all standing. And it was a 2.5, 3 hour sort of service. And the guys were standing 3, 4 deep around the altar and the sides of the church. They didn't complain. They didn't. Student was Clayton Rice. We had a mass here when we came back to school, a memorial mass, and his mom, like after communion, got up and just said, "I'm still a part of this class. I'm going to be at your graduation. I'm still here for you." Just powerful stuff. Jeff Morris died going into his senior year. That massive pillar just packed, and just the way the guys responded. When I go to those tragic events with our alumni, either students I've taught or students that were here that I know, and their classmates that come to support the family, and the way they talk about the community that was formed here that lasted longer, just really, to me, just powerful stuff. Like there's something we're doing that's lasting. It's deep within them.
Right.
I don't like that happens, but it's part of life, and it happens to all of us. And the fact that they know how to handle that and to handle it well.
That's what you said back to earlier, Wayne McKim saying, I teach kids, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's social studies or theater or biology or whatever it is, right? We're here educating the human and the young man in that way.
That's the stuff that lasts. I don't remember the
exactly
details of it.
Right,
So.
For sure.
I did have the honor, Andy Seward and Father Ralph and I took a group of students to Rome for the beatification of Father Chaminade in 2000. And that was, I hope you have an opportunity to get Andy in this chair sometime, because Andy was just tremendous. He referred to himself as a loyal skeptic. So he would be critical of everything, but when push came to shove, was loyal to this institution. And it was just a powerful influence and a great teacher of seniors. They would find him really tough, but at the end of the semester, if they needed an extra day or some extra work in order to pass, he was there helping them, working with them, making sure that they were successful. And so to spend a long weekend in Rome with Father Ralph and with Andy and a group of kids, and to celebrate the life of Father Chaminade, and it was just a powerful early on memory for me, like year 4, and it was pretty cool.
Good. So what does Pete Vlahutin do outside of Chaminade? What some hobbies, activities? What are you into?
Spend a lot of time doing what my kids are doing. So I have a daughter who's a senior who played volleyball throughout high school, so we spent a lot of time going to volleyball matches. I have a sophomore son. My younger 3 kids are all homeschooled, who's a big baseball player, so we spent a lot of time. JV season ended last week. Summer tournament season started this weekend, last weekend.
Ready.
So from one end to the other. And, my younger daughter's really into theater and dance, and so we're doing those things. And then their cousins live in town. Their grandparents live in town on my wife's side, so we spend a lot of time with them. And there's 4 or 5 YouTube personalities that we have to watch every time they drop something new. So that's a big thing we spend time doing. I love to read. I spend a lot of time when I'm by myself reading. I try to get 30 to 40 books read in a year.
Wow.
Not all, some fiction.
Good for you. Well, I was going to say, what kind of stuff are you reading?
I go in waves. Like right now, I'm on a legal thriller type of kick, so I'm working my way through some authors and their stuff. Just most of it's leisure, but I have a lot of like reading for work and nonfiction stuff that I do that I intersperse with that.
Sure.
So
That's a lot. That's impressive. That's one every
try to
2
sleep
weeks or
too,
so.
you know?
Yeah, one every 2 weeks or 30 or 40. Dang, good for you. That's awesome. Anything else that's on your mind that we didn't get to talk about before I ask my final question? Don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
but,
maybe the only other thing
forget anything.
It was probably one of the highlights of being in campus ministry was when Pope John Paul II came to St. Louis,
yes.
and we had 70 kids down at the youth rally. It was all day event, and just their enthusiasm for their faith, and just that kind of unique experience. Like usually have to travel to see the Pope, but to have him come to your city, and then going to mass with some faculty members, and just kind of. I've had some great experiences I never would have. I tell people all the time, I work at this really, really small all-boys high school, and I know professional athletes.
Yeah,
like you never would like,
Right.
and not just like, like when I was a freshman at De La Salle, all the big seniors, like I know their names, but like, no, I could stop these guys on the street and have a conversation with them because they went to Chaminade, and we know each other a little bit, and that type of thing I never would have envisioned. When I was in high school, like this is the career you're going to have, and this is the experiences you're going to have.
So two final things then for me is, not to put you on a timeline, but how much longer do you think you're going to do this in terms of it? And also, is there other stuff you want to do in your life? Not that you're running away from Chaminade, but what else is out there on your horizon? Because this is really your only job, right? I mean, your only sort of full-time job in that way, right?
I was trying to think. I think I've had 3 employment interviews in my life.
You're lucky.
Yeah. So my youngest is a 7th grader. So, that's at least 12, 15 more years to get her kind of. I don't know that I'll. At some point, I might say, you need some younger blood in administration. Throw me back in the classroom or have me do something else. I don't know that. I think somebody will say to me, "Hey, would you like to do this?" That's probably how my life is
time,
going.
Right?
I do have kind of like a dream retirement job. I'd love to be like a golf rules official for tournaments.
All right.
I'm not a real good golfer. I love the game of golf. I love the rules of golf, like just the discipline, the scenarios. So sometimes in my free time, I'll just pull up the rules of golf app on my phone and just take the quizzes. So I don't know that it pays anything, but it just would be fun to kind of
it's so specific.
Get some exercise and then kind of. But we'll see. It's one of those. Just maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't.
Fun. I like it. I like it.
We'll
I like it. Well, my last question that I ask everyone, a little more serious in tone, is we have our school motto, Esto Vir, and so obviously after your 28 years and years beyond that in the Marianist family, what does Esto Vir mean to Peter Vlahutin?
So I love the concept. It means a lot to me, especially having like a son that's gone through here to kind of be formed that way. But when I talk about be a man, I always think of Pilate with Christ going, behold the man. And really, to me, Esto Vir is about being Christ in every situation. So that's peace and justice, that's compassion, that's courage in the face of adversity, that's reaching out to other people and ministering to them in their need, that's becoming holy as you can be, as much Christ-like in virtue. And it's not you were here, you did it, you go on. Mm-hmm. It's like, and I love that Phil came up with this Esto Vir journey because it is a process. And our guys, hopefully, wherever they start, they're further along when they're seniors, and then they're further along when they graduate college, and they're further along when they get married or have their vocation and families and all that. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for your sharing today, and certainly for your 28 plus years, and for hopefully many more years before you hit the golf course and are on the PGA Tour as a rules official.
Yeah.
Thank you again also for joining us for another episode of The Hilltop.